Hello, community, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with DrAnita podcast. I am your host, DrAnita Polite-Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. We are back with our final in a series of amazing real conversations from the C-Suite with my guest, Tish Norman. She is an adjunct professor of African American Studies at Kentucky State University. She's a corporate trainer, speaker, and co-author of 7 leadership books, with another one on the way with Dr. Ellis. Please help me welcome back, community, Ms. Tish Norman. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm giving myself a round of applause.
A round of applause. I'm going to have to borrow that.
I am living in the flow of wealth and abundance, friend. How you doing? I'm so glad. Can I just say thank you for doing this? Can I say thank you for engaging the LinkedIn and the professional audience worldwide and having these conversations? They're fruitful. They're necessary, and I'm glad you're doing it. Keep doing it. Don't stop. I don't care if you have 1 or 1 million listeners. You're impacting some folks. So I want to tell you that.
Thank you. And this is one of the many reasons that I love you, because you always know just when to say it. This morning, I was out on my walk and I was thinking about, the time that we were going to be spending together this month. And I was thinking, how much longer am I going to keep doing this? Who's really listening? Is it making an impact? Is it making a difference? Does anybody care? And to your point, if it's for 1 or 1 million, I'm compelled to keep doing this because of the voices that I can host at my table, the voices such as yours. So thank you for that confirmation. And I will keep going at least through the end of the year. And I will reevaluate and see what's what. But I appreciate that. And yours is a voice that we need to hear. Both as adjunct professor of African American Studies, as a cultural critic, as a trainer, but most importantly, as someone who has their finger on the pulse of the generations that are coming up through the ranks. And so right now, I want us to transition the conversation from celebrating Juneteenth to the 4th of July, and how it is that we can help to get that spirit that says, just like the 4th of July is expected to be celebrated by everyone because it is American history, how can we encourage that same expectation that is authentic and intentional by celebrating Juneteenth, which, to your point, it's Black history, and Black history is U.S. history?
Yeah. So I can go back to my childhood growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay. 4th of July was amazing. Color was never even an issue. We didn't talk about it. It was not, Black people, white people, and just for the sake of this conversation, we'll say Black and white, even though America's the most diverse it's ever been, right? We used to go to see the fireworks. Now, of course, our family barbecues were family. It was in our family at the time was majority African American. But when we would go see the fireworks at my middle school, what would be my middle school, and there was everybody there. I grew up in a very diverse community in Cleveland, Ohio, Shaker Heights, a very diverse suburb of Cleveland, and everybody would be there. It wasn't a Black or white thing. It literally was just a holiday. And I can even say this, DrAnita, it wasn't even just a Black or white thing. We didn't even talk about, this is when America got its freedom and the soldiers marched, and all we knew is family, barbecue, and fireworks.
Yes.
We just knew it was a good time. It was when you saw your family. It was when you hung out at barbecue and you saw your cousins, and then you went and saw the fireworks when the sun went down, and you got your blankets and you went and sat out and you saw big flowers in the sky. So when you think about the good times that would bring families together, holidays that would bring families together, I do think it's good that the conversation has taken a turn in the last 30 years, because it has. People are looking at the why we do what we do, not just what we do, which is why the exploration or the uncovering or the unpeeling of the onion has come about, because people want to know, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to know why we have this day off, because I don't personally celebrate it. So why would I not make money on this day? Or why would a bank be closed for a holiday that I don't celebrate? And so I'm glad that the conversations are coming about where people want to know the history, where people want to know that Frederick Douglass even challenged what is the 4th of July to a Negro. You know, why would we? And for people to understand that Texans and other even states surrounding Texas have celebrated Juneteenth for 80, 90, 100 years. But yet no one has ever heard of it before. And why that has been a celebration that was inclusive or exclusive to Texas. Why didn't it become common knowledge in history books across the board? So my simple answer, my quick answer is we don't celebrate Juneteenth or 4th of July. Juneteenth is not the Black 4th of July. We don't celebrate either or. It's not either or, it's both and. So we would begin to celebrate and introduce and normalize Juneteenth with people in positions of power who may not be aware of it, who turn to the few Black employees that may work or be aligned with their organization and say, well, what do we do? Do we do red, black, and green like Black History Month? Do we burn candles? Do we have red, black, and green ice cream? Do we wear African colors? What do we do? Well, you have to become knowledgeable of it first. You have to become knowledgeable of it, and then you understand how we introduce it subtly. And will Juneteenth ever make it to the level of 4th of July as far as an entire country is concerned? I don't know about that, but if it does, it's going to take time.
I love how you said both or and not one or the other. And for the longest, at least when I was in school, Juneteenth might have been mentioned, but there was no full-on celebration. But I have to say, I appreciate how you talked about your growing up and that it wasn't a white holiday versus anybody else's holiday. It was just a holiday. And it was the same for me growing up. It was just a holiday. We got together, Daddy barbecued, you know, we ate, we had homemade strawberry ice cream, which was delicious. And to your point, when the sun went down, we had fireworks. We get out in the street and, you know, pop the safe ones like everybody else. So to your point, it was just a celebration. As I became a young adult, though, I began to question. And the words that you just quoted from Frederick Douglass were my same words. Why would I celebrate a holiday that was celebrating independence? And at the time, we were still considered 3/5 of a person. So it didn't really extend to us. Why would I celebrate that? So I can understand how some people might be having this personal epiphany to not to say I'm not going to celebrate it, but to be clear as to why we celebrate it. Just like some people have questioned why do we celebrate Columbus Day, and we know the outcome of that and his exploration, right?
We have to keep reintroducing it.
Yeah.
That's why I say there'll never be a shortage of education or the need of education or the need of teachers, educators, because people are always going to have children and the knowledge is always going to have to be spread, right? And so that's what folk like you and I, who are trainers and teachers and speakers and practitioners and consultants, we have to keep spreading the knowledge. New knowledge is created every day. That does not boot out or trump history. History is what's needed to be known first before, because what's that saying that you and I have heard 1,001 times? If you don't know your history, you're destined to repeat it.
Yeah.
And that's literally what you and I are living in right now. We're seeing our history being repeated. We see it with the overcrowding of America's jail cells. We're seeing the overcrowding and the overpopulation of Black and brown people, mostly Black, in jail or in prison. We see struggle with voting rights and voting equality and equity across this country, stuff that we thought we covered already. But when we don't know it, we repeat it. We're like a robot that keeps bumping into the wall again. And so I think that organizationally, right, from church to classroom to corporate, we need to, wherever there are audiences gathered, heck, families, there needs to be the conversation about how these topics are being introduced, the significance of them, exposing your children to them. And I would imagine, DrAnita, that this information is not being passed on to children because the parents of them just don't know. It's not being talked about at work because leadership just doesn't know. So we have to know better. And then when we know better, what?
We do better.
Period.
Yes. And on that note, I think a good way to sum up this transition in our last week of June, from the celebration and conversation around Juneteenth to leading into the 4th of July, I think a good way to sum that up would be, America, let us be intentional about pursuing the freedom from what ails us as a society. And what ails us as a society are the assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs that we place on other people simply because we don't know them. That is a thought that I would leave with you. Tish Norman, it has been a delight. It has been an experience. It has been a pleasure to have you with me for this very special series of real conversations from the C-suite, just celebrating and discussing Juneteenth, a little bit of culture critic information that you brought to us, and very excited about the co-authoring of your book with Dr. Ellis. Again, we will definitely have you back on the show to talk about that. Polished and powerful. Thank you so much for being with me. Most importantly, thank you for being a dear friend.
Absolutely. Listen, listeners, tell a friend, watch Dr. Anita's podcast, watch her series, go back and watch them on your next long drive, listen to them at the gym. And most importantly, as we move ahead and we look for action steps, we look at implementation, right? We look at how we can use the knowledge that we've talked about just in this series on the podcast. What can we do? I don't know what I don't know. Well, then no, have dialogue. Create days and times and carve out times that your company and your employees can just come together and talk and share with the purpose of, I don't know, but I want to know. I did this, but I want to do better. Create and carve out those spaces so that we can all advance. We have a shared history. Yes, period. We do. We have a shared history. So we encourage you to do any of those that I just shared with you and more. The ball is in your court.
Thank you, Ms. Tish. And on that note, community, this series is a wrap. If you'd like to hear this podcast or any of the previous podcasts with my dear friend, Tish Norman, please go to the website, DrAnita.com. Remember to spell out the word doctor. And once you get to the landing page at the top, find the link that says Keeping It Real Podcast. While you're there, please feel free to check out my services and my resources. In the meantime, as Tish just mentioned, please get in the flow. Follow, like, and overshare any of my podcasts that help you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Please share them with your network. Until next time, this is DrAnita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.